Well, I bet y'all didn't see this one coming. So, I was kinda planning to do something like this. Well, mainly for one video in particular, which will be on the worst list. But, why not? Let's just go over my top 10 best and my 5 worst 1-minute melees. Now, let me be clear when I say 5 worst. And this is kind of a spoiler warning. 2 of them I consider just fine or boring, but I wouldn't call them bad by any means. The other 3 are actually bad, from mildly bad to very bad. And I know Nemesis Bloodreich, or Bloodacre, however you want to pronounce it, actually did a top 10 best and worst 1-minute melee, which, if anyone is curious, I'll leave a link in the description. I don't know, I just feel like doing it. Especially since he's kind of a reason why I got the inspiration for this, so... yeah, great video, by the way. Go check it out. Not right now, obviously, but whatever you want to. So anyway, with that being said, I also have a fair amount of honorable mentions, which we'll get through later before my number 1. Or, in this case, number 1s. Here's something I should throw into before we start. I tried for at least nearly 10 minutes to try and find 5 other entries to be on the worst list, but I couldn't find any. Some of them that are actually good that I just don't really have the best memory on, I just felt like not including on the list. Alright, so I think I'm just stalling here. Let's just get on with the list. I'm not leaving any bookmarks. I'm not really in the mood for it. I'm just here for the audio recording. So anyway, number 10 best. So, what if I told you that 1-minute melee introduced me to a particular fighting game? No, it wasn't Pokemon. It wasn't Mario. It wasn't Metal Gear Solid. No, it's Skullgirls. But which one? It's BB Hood vs. Peacock. I actually feel like being number 10 is kind of the perfect start for this list. Well, for the best list, at least. Also, another minor spoiler alert, but not really. I'm sad to disappoint you all, but the other Skullgirls ones aren't on my best list. I love them, don't get me wrong. Paimon vs. Decapre is great. Valentine vs. Ibuki, also great. Shantae vs. Philia is pretty forgotten, but I really liked it. But I just felt like including BB Hood vs. Peacock since it's kind of the more iconic one of the bunch, even though I haven't seen it in a while. But anyway, the fight itself is goofy. I love almost every single attack that Peacock uses, same with BB Hood, and yeah, that's pretty much it. I want to put it at number 10 on this list, and the only Skullgirls one for that matter, since this did introduce me to the franchise, and I have to give it credit where it's due. You never know, you might get into some franchises from a particular YouTube video. So, yeah. Now, I will mention, I'm not going to start the worst list off just yet. I'm going to wait till number 5. Number 9 best. So, I actually completely forgot to mention one 1-minute melee we'll get to later at my second best spot. And when I actually remembered it, I didn't know which one of these had to leave my best list. They're both too good. I love their action. And yeah, so I didn't know which one of these had to get off my list. Until Nem did actually do a tie for number 10. Even though I wasn't planning to do that, but for this one time, and this is the only entry on the list where it will include 2 entries. Well, 2 videos to be specific. This is the only spot on the list that will do that. So, my number 9 is Sasori vs. Alice and Raiden vs. Genos. I love both of these. They have great action, especially Sasori vs. Alice with a really good high-paced combat. And again, Raiden vs. Genos does have some great fast-paced combat as well. They're both too good, but I just didn't know which one needs to kick off the list. So, I'm just going to include both of them. I love both of them, so yeah. I should mention, I'm not going to be super in-depth about the fights, because I'm just going to kind of talk about them for a moment and move on. No, I'm not kidding. That's how I'm going to do this. For Death Battle, that's an exception, but for here, yeah, no, not really. Especially since these fights last only 1 minute long. Alright, let's move on to number 8 best. This actually I didn't find out about until a couple of years ago, and this is actually the Season 3 premiere. Ichigo vs. Sasuke is very good. Great action, I love the fast-paced sword combat from Ichigo, and I mean, what else do you want me to say? Like, again, if this is Death Battle, then that'd be one thing, but I'm probably not going to have a lot for most of these entries. With some exceptions, until we get to the worst list. So anyway, now we're on to number 7 best. Number 7 on this list is also an introduction, but not to one of the characters. Nah, it's the other one. Asuna vs. Orie. It introduced me to both of them technically, but I had to thank this for introducing me to Orie. She is awesome. Not to mention, I actually love playing as her in BlazBlue Cross-Type Battle. Although, funny little fact about that, for the longest time, I thought she was the Sword Art Online character, but nope. She's from Under Night, and I knew nothing about Under Night in birth until I got into BlazBlue Cross-Type Battle. I'm probably literally the only person on this planet that actually plays it nowadays, but not all the time. It's an every once in a while thing, but yeah, anyway. It's just sword combat. That's really good. I don't know what else to say, so let's move on. Number 6 best. This I also found out about, I would say, probably close to 2 to 3 years-ish ago. Not like the 7 years ago when this actually happened, or actually, is it nearly 8? I'm not exactly sure. But anyway, next up is Guts vs. Kirito. Okay, off topic for just a quick moment. Death Battle, can you please do Bluey versus Kirito? This is now my most requested Death Battle matchup. Like, I've been wanting this for nearly 2 years. Can you please at least consider? Please. I made my own custom track and everything. Okay, anyway, let's just get back to Guts vs. Kirito. I'll talk about that another time if you really want me to. Now, before Guts vs. Dimitri came out, this was actually a breath of fresh air compared to Guts vs. Nightmare. Although, to be honest, I actually really like that death battle. I'm sorry, Biff, who isn't really a fan of it. And actually, wait, I think this did introduce me to Kirito, now that I think about it. So, yeah, there you go. Okay, so I'm not going to really have too much more to talk about, but I will admit, the part where Guts activates his Berserker armor actually gave off some really good combat. That's actually really well done. Anyway, let's move on. Please do Bluey vs. Kirito Death Battle, please. Number 5 best. Number 5 worst starts next, but anyway. So, my number 5 on this list, I was originally going to have just a tiny bit lower, like a spot or 2 lower. But, nah, I'll put it here. Kirby vs. Pac-Man, in my opinion, is a real treat. Since I love Kirbo and Pac-Man. Anyway, Kirby's part of the entire fight. Oh, God, I just love every single thing he does. Now, Pac-Man can pull off some really good combos as well. From Kirby using the ninja and fighting ability to Pac-Man wombo comboing Kirby with the ghost in his fists. Like, this plays extremely well. But also, this just made me realize something. Yoshi vs. Pac-Man exists, which is obviously not on the list because that's a DBX and not a 1-minute melee, so. Although, if you want my opinion on it, I think it's actually very good. I'd say a 7.5 out of 10. And this is the only Kirby 1-minute melee. That's kind of disappointing. No, I don't mean like a one-and-done deal with the franchise. I meant like the actual character named Kirby. Some other characters did get some 1-minute melees, so yeah. But no, I meant Kirby himself. Could you imagine if he got another one? That would be cool. I mean, sure, he appears for a really quick cameo in Goku vs. Sonic, but it lasts for nearly 5 seconds. Not even kidding with you. He doesn't even do anything. So, yeah. Anyway, let's move on. Number 5, worst. Okay, we're starting off the worst list now, and this is going to be a controversial opinion. Now, hear me out when I say this. I know this has somewhat of a decent reception. Well, kinda. Wow, it has nearly 2 million views. I'm actually surprised about that. And, it's from a franchise I absolutely love, and another anime franchise that I also quite like. So, I kinda don't even want to say it right now, but I know all you're just like, just say it, dude. I'm sorry, but number 5 is Gon vs. Deku. Okay, hear me out when I say this. The actual fights are good. It's just the plot that's just kind of boring. I don't really seem to even care about it. In fact, guess how many times I saw this video? Only 3 times. Once, I think around the time I discovered it. Second time was not too long after. And the third time was, I think, well, it was a long time afterwards, but anyway. Now, it's only number 5 on the list because it's just a plot that's boring. The fights themselves are fine. I have nothing to complain about. Except maybe the first fight where Hisoka actually screws up Deku, and yeah, that's pretty much it. And this is coming from a pretty big My Hero Academia fan. Like, there's actually better ones. Like Kakashi vs. Aizawa. That's actually a great one I made. I actually really like. And Yang vs. Bakugo is fine. I know Nem isn't really too big on it. I think it's perfectly fine. But yeah, in my opinion, this is only the least bad of the bunch. It's not even bad. The plot's just boring, but the fights themselves are good. So, anyway, let's move on to number 4 best. Alright, are you ready for 1 minute of pure, non-stop action? Bowser Jr. vs. Megasonic fucking rules. God, I love this ever since it first came out. This is just 1 minute of pure, non-stop action. I'm not even kidding with you. That's actually why I love it so much. Megasonic and Bowser Jr. pull off some really good combos, and that's pretty much it. The story itself, though, before the fight starts, is actually kind of interesting, where Bowser Jr. just wants some better mechanics rather than keeping his clown car. Now, the thumbnail might actually surprise you when you go and look it up right now. You may think, hey, wait a second, that's not Mecha Sonic, it's Metal Sonic. Well, Metal Sonic does appear for a moment, but before the fight even starts, Mecha Sonic comes in out of nowhere and destroys him instantly. Yeah, that actually caught me off guard. But I'm not complaining though, because man, the rest of the fight is perfect. Amazing combos, really good high-paced, fast-paced action. Ugh, I love this! But it's such a shame that the one followed after that isn't so good. We'll get there. Number 4, worst. This fight's on here for only one reason. The ending. Zero vs. Meta Knight is definitely good, but compared to Gon vs. Deku, where I did really like the fights, but the story was just boring, here, I like the fight, but the ending itself is horrible. Now, keep in mind, I love Meta Knight, but okay, if there are any actual fans of Zero, then just skip ahead like 5 or 10 seconds. I fucking hate Zero. I don't give a shit about him. Okay, that's it, I'm done. Nope, I ain't done yet. I'm glad Cloud and Noctis whooped your ass, bitch. Anyway, I'm sorry Meta Knight actually lost on that one. Now you may be thinking, oh, come on, dude, this is a super old death battle. When did you even first watch it? I watched it the first time it got uploaded. I was actually interested. And from that day forward, I hated Zero so much. But again, the rest of the fight is definitely good. It's just the ending that I hate. That's pretty much it. Now, the next 3 entries are mildly bad to actually very bad. But I wouldn't even call number 1 the worst of all time. But for this, it is. So anyway, let's move on. Number 3, best. So, here's the final spoiler alert. The next entry and this entry are both Sonic-themed 1-minute melees. Yeah, I'm sorry for kind of spoiling it here, but I mean, I just felt like it, so it's not like a super huge deal to me or anything. Anyway, Mario vs. Sonic. Wow. I was not expecting it to go this hard, but damn. So since this is a modern 1-minute melee, there's actually a bit of story here. Mario goes up to Peach's castle, and when she finds her missing on her throne, or chair or whatever, Mario immediately rushes off, but he encounters Sonic, and to cut a long story short, he wants to help him, but Mario doesn't, and they end up fighting anyway. The fight itself is really, really good. I can just imagine my OC beating the fuck out of Mario right now. No joke, that's actually kind of feel nowadays whenever I watch this. I just feel like my OC would beat the fuck out of Mario easily. I love how Sonic can pull off a bunch of fast-paced combos, especially after the no more messing around line, which, wow, that was just phenomenal right there. So many hits. And, yeah, that's kind of about it. I don't really have a lot more to say. Now, you may be wondering, why isn't it any higher up on the list? The other 2 are just a little more special to me. That's why. Anyway, number 3, worst. This actually is kind of a coincidence that Nem and I would actually have this on the same exact placement. But my number 3 is Frieza vs. Mewtwo. Now, not to be confused with the one they did in Season 3. Or, wait, isn't Season 3? Okay, so I just had to look it up. No, this is not the one from Season 5. We're talking about the one from Season 1, where I think they actually did screw up here. The fight itself is just boring. Mewtwo barely even does anything, and that's pretty much it. I don't even know what else to say about this. It's bad, but not like the worst. I've seen worst coming up later up on the next 2 entries. But out of these 3, it's the least bad, but it's just boring, really. I wouldn't really call it the worst. And I just repeated myself, but that's fine. Anyway, if I had to say something positive, the sprites do look good. That's it. The sprites do look good. I guess the environment looks fine too, and I'll actually admit, the opening with the Master Ball was actually very nice. That was actually a really neat touch. Other than that, yeah, it's bad, but in a boring way. Which is why we're going to move on to the next entry, number 2, best. So, since this is the other Sonic Death Battle, you may be wondering, which one is it? Is it Wario vs. Knuckles? No. Trunks vs. Silver? No. Luigi vs. Tails? No. Shadow vs. Vegeta? No. Which one is it? It's Flash vs. Sonic. Oh! Yeah, Flash vs. Sonic, in my opinion, is just a little bit better than Mario vs. Sonic, especially with how long I've known this one. I've known this 1-minute melee ever since I was in 9th grade, and yeah, I'm not kidding, that's how long I've actually known these for. For the longest time, this felt like the best 1-minute melee, and I could kind of agree with it, but it's not number 1, obviously. This This is the perfect Sonic 1-minute melee. Really fast combat from both characters. I feel every single impact. It feels special. I love the Super Saiyan transformation where he kicks a flash, goes up above the earth, and then comes back down with a really impactful finish. God, I fucking love all of that. And even when he reverts back to normal, I just love the little line he does. What's the matter? Got nothing left? I kind of repeated that to myself a few times, not gonna lie. Yeah, this is just perfect right here. This is easily the best Sonic 1-minute melee I've ever seen, but it's slightly outclassed compared to my number one. So yeah, as much as I fucking love this one, I just say my number one is just a tiny bit better. Anyway, number two worst. So, Nemesis, I am really sorry that this wasn't the worst 1-minute melee. I found one that was actually bad. But, this is also one I just think is more boring than anything else. And yes, I think this was just lazy, but at least there's some good combat here. It's Dante versus Ragna. I'm sorry, Nem, but I don't think this is the worst. Number one is the worst, but this is close. Like I said, this is just so boring. Dante barely even does anything, and Ragna just gets a shit ton of combos, which I'll admit at least look good. Well, in my opinion, at least. Also, yeah, Ragna is wearing a white outfit here instead of his basic red. Now, to quote Nemesis, I get that they look extremely similar, but I don't know who's gonna tell who's different. Or whatever he said, I don't remember, link in the description again. And yeah, there's actually one moment where there's 8 seconds left on the timer where Ragna is moving around really fast, and Dante does nothing. He disconnected his controller. He literally does nothing for 8 seconds, and Ragna wins. To quote Nem, he pulls a Dante and disconnects his controller. Okay, I'll admit, that's actually fucking hilarious. Anyway, okay, so the fight itself is boring. There's some alright combat going on here, but I can at least say that, you know, for the whole Dante disconnects his controller thing that also happened for, like, 2 other videos I could think of that Nem actually covered, I can at least admit it's fucking hilarious. But, yeah. But as a 1-minute melee, it's just really, really boring. But why is it worse than Frieza vs. Mewtwo, which some people want to know? Well, Frieza vs. Mewtwo I've known for a while, and believe it or not, I actually liked it for a while, so yeah. But I can at least say there's a little more going on with Frieza vs. Mewtwo than this one. Like, they're both equally boring, but at least this just is slightly worse. Also, because I didn't watch this when it first came out. I didn't. Mewtwo vs. Frieza I did, but this one I didn't. Oh yeah, by the way, I don't really care about Dante. I like Ragna, but I don't really care about Dante. So, at least Frieza vs. Mewtwo... Excuse me, that was way too fast. At least Frieza vs. Mewtwo had 2 characters I actually was interested in. Anyway, let's move on to number 1. But before we get there, it's time for the honorable mentions. There are way too many good ones, so we're gonna try and go really quick on these. Waddle Dees vs. Goombas. Scorpion vs. Ghost Rider, Master Hand vs. Polygon Man, Cell vs. Miriam, Yu Narukami vs. Polan Ref from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Batman vs. Iron Man, Penguin vs. DeCaprio, Bill Cipher vs. Sans, and Trunks vs. Silver. There are far too many good 1-minute melees to put on my honorable mentions. Although, if I had to pick 5 of them for numbers 11 through 15, Trunks vs. Silver would be 11, Penguin vs. DeCaprio would be number 12, Yu vs. Polan Ref would be number 13, Polygon Man vs. Master Hand would be number 14, and I guess Scorpion vs. Ghost Rider would be number 15. Also, Nab, I'm sorry, but I've always loved Master Hand versus Polygon Man. It's just my opinion, really. Alright, so now it's time for the number 1 worst. We'll get to the number 1 best next. I know I went kind of out of order here, but I kind of don't really care at the same time. Let's just get my worst over with before we go on to the best. So for the longest time when this came out, after I watched it, I knew this was going to be bad. I didn't expect it to be bad when I saw the notification that it popped up. And, you know how I mentioned Bowser Jr. vs. Mechasonic, where that had phenomenal combos and really good action? And there was actually a sequel building up to it. I hate Bowser vs. Mechasonic, I hate it! This is horrible. You know what? Forget the previous 2 even were just boring. No, they look good in comparison. Bowser vs. Mechasonic is a horrible sequel compared to the previous 1-minute melee where that was phenomenal. You know, this actually does feel like that crappy Disney DVD sequel that, well, is nowhere near as good as the original, in my opinion. That's how it feels like to me. Now, here are some things I do actually like. First off, I like how the story picked up literally right after Bowser Jr. lost. The thumbnail looks cool. No kidding, the video quality is almost 4K resolution. I'm not even kidding with you. It feels like that. You know, I actually tried to make a separate review of this, which I may or may not upload the recording I did for. That was a year ago, almost. But for this one, I feel like they put way more effort into everything but the actual fight. The fight itself is so fucking slow. Bowser somehow wins, but Mecha Sonic is nowhere near as fast as his previous video. Like, what the hell happened here? Oh yeah, remember when I mentioned at the beginning that my number one is not the worst? You know what, I take that back. This is the worst 1 minute melee I've ever seen in my entire life. I can at least give this. Frieza vs. Mewtwo, I liked for a while, but I just found it to be boring. Dante vs. Ragna is boring, but at least it had some good action and funny moments. Here, there's almost nothing good I could say about this fight. No, I didn't mean in general, I meant the entire fight. If you want a better Bowser 1 minute melee in my opinion, just look up Bowser vs. Eggman. That was actually a great 1 minute melee. No, not the death battle that came out in 2024, I meant the 1 minute melee that came out nearly 10 years ago. I could happily recommend that in a heartbeat any day of the week over this piece of shit. Yeah, the fight itself is so fucking slow, there's nothing interesting that happens, Mecha Sonic is not as fast as his previous fight. Yeah, this is fucking horrible. Although, if you want my advice, watch Bowser Jr. vs. Mecha Sonic. Again, that is really fast, high-paced action, and I love it. Here, it's so fucking... it's so fucking slow, it can put me to sleep. Yeah, it's that slow. But anyway, I think I'm done here. Bowser vs. Mecha Sonic, I give you my award for the shittiest 1 minute melee I've ever seen in my life. Leave me the fuck alone. Okay, now that we got that out of the way, let's move on to the number one best. No kidding, my number one was tough to figure out. I wouldn't really figure out what would be my number one best. In fact, for the longest time, I didn't really have a favorite. I just loved everything. Well, the good ones, at least. Mewtwo vs. Frieza. But my number one introduced me to two different characters that, well, one of them I remember and the other I remember too, but not as much. And this one is just... it's a bit more special to me than the previous two. The previous two best, to still be on topic. So, what is that special number one spot? Sakuya vs. Dio is perfect. Amazing high-paced combat, nothing feels too uneven or anything, it feels literally perfect. And also, I love when they both stop the clock when there's only 1 second left and they keep fighting for another minute. I love that. There's actually a climactic moment here where Dio uses the Road Roller, but Sakuya gets out of the way just in time. And, yeah, Sakuya's combos are really well done. Like, I love them so much. And yeah, this did introduce me to Dio and JoJo's Bizarre Adventure in general when this came out. Not even kidding with you, and... wow, this is 10 years old. Nice. Ever since this got uploaded, I've always loved Sakuya vs. Dio. I wouldn't watch this all the time, but definitely at least every once in a while. So yeah, I don't really have a lot more to say, but Sakuya vs. Dio is now my favorite 1 minute melee of all time. And that's the list. Like I mentioned, well, actually, I don't know if I mentioned this at the beginning, this is all simply my own personal opinion. If y'all have a different placement about it, that's perfectly fine. But just note that this is just my own placements. You don't have to follow along or anything. And you know what? Just because of how good Sakuya vs. Dio is, I'm going to link that in the description too. I'm not even kidding with you. I actually encourage all of you to go at least give it one watch. You will not regret it, I promise. But anyway, that's that. So, I don't know if I'll do this for DBX. Just saying. But yeah, that's about it. So, I'll see y'all later with Word Review next time, and that'll be all for now.